That way everybody can see where the chat feature is. Now, that being said, we will have a question and answer session at the end as well. And so as you think of your questions for our panelists, please write them down in the chat feature. And that way you won't forget to ask them and we won't forget to answer them, okay? Other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Hadley, who is also a co-worker of mine at the Los Angeles Center of Photography, and she's got some other information to give to you right now. So take it away, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Again, yes, thanks so much for coming and joining us tonight. We're super excited. I am the Director of Marketing at the Los Angeles Center of Photography. We have a couple of other people on here tonight. Julia Dean, our Executive Director, is here. Brandon Gannon, our Director of Operations. I see Sherry Berger, who is one of our board members. And I also want to say we have a couple of the other artists that are in the exhibition, Say What You Want to Say. I see Patrice Fisher here, who's also a member of LACP, and Terrell, Halsey, who's nice to see you there. Hi. In addition to Marissa and Brandon, who are going to be speaking tonight. I just want to say a couple of things about LACP and then we'll take it away. We have a call for entry right now that's open. It's called Exploring Humanity, and it's juried by Marissa Caicholo, and the deadline for entries is September 21st. We have 2 more events this week. We have one tomorrow that's just for members. It's an industry insider led by Eric Joseph, a board member and a sort of master printer, talking to Scott DiSabato from Canson. And then on Thursday, we have another of our inside photography conversations. So anyway, check our website if you're interested in any more events. Tonight, as I said, we're excited to hear from some of the artists who are in the exhibition, Say What You Want to Say. And moderating tonight is Sean Theodore. So thank you so much for being here, Sean.
You're welcome.
Sean is an award-winning photographer whose work opens broad conversations regarding the role of the photographer in the shaping of agency and imagery, engages in new forms of storytelling, and impacts the trajectory of the collective Black consciousness. Sean has participated in many exhibitions. I saw his work at Photo LA for the first time this past January and was blown away. It's beautiful. He's been in the African American Museum in Philadelphia, the Bonello Museum, the Barnes Foundation, the Stephen Kasher Gallery, APAD, the Catherine Edelman Gallery, just to mention a few. And his work has also been seen in on Showtime in Apple. I don't know exactly how long, but that's amazing. Rock Nation, Paper Magazine, New York Magazine, Smithsonian, The Atlantic, The New York Times, and others. So without further ado, we're so grateful to have you here and honored. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for asking me to moderate. And I have a pure and sort of joyous love for LACP. I love visiting when I'm out there. So this is a true treat for me to be a part of this tonight. And shout out to my buddy, Mr. Halsey, who is a Philly shooter. I had to shout him out because that's what we do when we're from Philly. I see him in the crowd there. Let's start it off tonight with a conversation with Marissa. I'd like to introduce her. She is a photographer whose themes range from climate justice, outdoor access, culture and identity, and exploring marginalized communities. She's a visual storyteller with incredible nuance of empathy. I fell in love with her work recently. This is just in the space of being introduced to her. And she's Oakland based, just like our friend Brandon here. So we have an Oakland night, and I think that's going to be kind of a cool thing. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marissa.
Hi, everyone. Let me get started with sharing my screen, and I can share some work with you all today. So I think all right, it looks like I'm sharing now. Awesome, seeing thumbs up. Oh, great. Well, thank you so much, Sean. Really blown away by that introduction. That I can die now, happy. And thank you.
It was meant to relax you. It was meant to take the edge off.
I'm feeling very flattered and just very honored to be in virtual space with so many artists, some friends in the crowd, my dad in the crowd. So this is just a really good virtual space to be in. And want to thank the LA Center of Photography for giving this platform to Black artists, for inviting all of us to slow down in the midst of this global health pandemic, racial injustice pandemic. You know, I think if I can come at you all very honestly, it's been a really turbulent and confusing few months for me, with both balancing really high highs, like having like this platform to share my art and to speak truth to power, but also to see and to hold so much space for grieving, the ability to share physical space with each other, grieving our environment. As here in Northern California, we're seeing a longer and more intense wildfire season due to climate crisis. It's not anything new, but it's our attention, I feel, has been pulled in a lot of different ways ever since this pandemic started. And so I think that just doubles my appreciation to be with you all and to slow down and talk about art and hopefully create some healing through that. I'll be sharing some recent work that I made this year, mostly since the start of the pandemic. And before I get into that, just wanting to share a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from. So as Sean mentioned, based in Oakland, I've been in the Bay Area for the past 3.5 years. I've had the privilege of calling a lot of places home throughout my life. So I was born in Northeastern Pennsylvania. I can't quite claim Philadelphia, but I've been around it a bunch. I spent most of my life in Pennsauken, New Jersey, South Jersey growing up, and went to school in the South. So I've been a bunch of places, but I think where my photography comes from, I'm self-taught and have mostly taught myself by photographing the people around me, and primarily my family. So this is the first photograph I made. And this was on a point and shoot camera that my parents gave me as a gift 11 years ago, of my youngest brother, Ben, who's 13 years old this year. And that's really strange to say out loud. Photography was my way of being present. I think especially in my adolescence and young adult years, traveling a lot. When I would come home to visit my family, photography was kind of my way of looking back at that time and saying, okay, I was here. And while I'm there, being able to pause and say, okay, I'm here. And let me not think about what else is going on, but let me just be here. I'm not going to share a lot of photos of my family because honestly, a lot of them are unsalvageable from my early days of putting very intense filters on my photos. But this was how I learned composition and how I learned to see. And I think I was able to afford a lot of intimacy with photographing my family, but I also photographed a lot of joy. And I think when I look back on my childhood, it's with the lens that I had a really good childhood. And when I think about my childhood and have come to understand it more, and as my parents have let in more and more of how they struggled to give us that great childhood, I think it taught me to hold a lot of complexities all at the same time, that, you know, that there's no one word for our lives. And I think that's kind of the approach that I take to photography, is that there's no, I'm documenting a moment, but that is not what defines that person on the other side of my lens. And so I think, you know, in understanding where I came from and my family, you know, getting vocabulary that I came from a disadvantaged community, but never felt that, I think taught me that photography is very limited in a sense that it can't show the fullness of what's going on, but you can look into places that people aren't looking and show a more full picture. So when the protests began, I was really frustrated with seeing people focusing on destruction and that becoming the first story that was starting to come out of the protests of violence. And so I went out first without a camera and found that, like many other places, there's not one type of protest, there's not one type of person, there's not one Black experience. And I think as I looked back at my work to prepare for this talk, the two major tenets that I was starting to see in my work was the family unit and joy as an act of resistance. And so that's where I'm going to be focusing today with you all. And so the family unit, this draws really closely from how I grew up and with my start in photographing my siblings. I'm the oldest of 7, and so I just photographed babies in their childhoods as I grew up, and I think that that was something that I just naturally have an eye for when I'm out there, but was also surprised to see how many babies were out in the streets with their parents and with their families. And I think that as a symbol of resistance, since so many systems that are designed to oppress Black people begin with separating families, from the transatlantic slave trade, which severed families, to today with mass incarceration. When I see whole families, I see that as a form of protest. And so that was something that I was really gravitated to as I was photographing the early days of the protests.
Yeah, your work really, your family work speaks so much into your past. There's this really interesting connection, the intimate sort of work that's happening and how you're able to translate that intimate family work into a really unique way of describing protest. That's one of the things that I was immediately taken by your work. It felt like I wasn't looking at a protest. It was more of it felt almost, I guess to borrow your words, there was joy. There was a sense of joy in all of these spaces, even though we're speaking of resistance. So I really appreciate that work.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think I've been thinking a lot about familial legacies and how when we're thinking about anti-racism, we think of that as something, as a conversation that we have with strangers, but truly, I think, you know, we need to think about creating family legacies that are rooted in anti-racism, and that begins first and foremost with the family unit. And I think once that is established, that's how we can build movements and ripple beyond that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't let me stop you. I've got questions later.
Don't worry. So then to speak to the second half of, or second pillar that I was seeing a lot in my work is, as Sean was referencing, joy as an act of resistance. And I think for me, this is something that's especially powerful because I am a joyful person, and I do not see that as something that is incompatible with my anger at seeing injustice. I think of that as something that is complementary to it, and a form of survival and of protest itself. I think we need to be rooted in the fact that everything that we're doing is to create a future in which Black people and all people are able to breathe freely, to laugh freely, to experience joy, and to not have to feel apologetic for that. And so I think in realizing that future, we need to see models for that today, and see models for that within the struggle, and know that that is not to be something that is toxic, but like, I think there's a nuance between like toxic positivity and showing joy as an act of survival and resistance. So I really drawn to the underdog story. I know earlier we were talking about with the Philly folks
Yeah.
There's cheesesteaks and Rocky Balboa.
Right.
I think that's why I'm really drawn to the underdog story, and I think that that's a story that can really serve as a model for a lot of the Black experience that I've gotten to see and to witness, and that there can be space for tenderness and for joy in the face of adversity and oppression, and that is how we oppose that.
And this is from Heels Down, that last one, that's from Heels Down, Fist Up, right?
Yes, so this was a really unique protest that I got to photograph north of San Francisco, and it was organized by this lady in the center, Brianna Noble, who gained a bit of celebrity through another photograph,
Right.
showing her on horseback in downtown Oakland. And she used that to create a nonprofit that helps create access pathways for Brown children to enter horseback riding, and has since used that to also organize the equestrian community for Black Lives Matter. So it was really extraordinary seeing, you know, in the wake of all of these protests and of calls for accountability and of racial justice, how that has echoed within different communities, like horseback riding, like basketball, like the photography industry, which I think has started with first seeing diversity as who's in front of the lens, and is now taking a really careful look at who's on the other side of it too.
Exactly.
So that's been really inspiring to see all of these different pockets mobilized for Black Lives Matter.
I absolutely love this photo, not just because I'm from Philly and we have an amazing urban equestrian culture here. It's nice to see a Black woman in the role of cowboy, cowgirl, like in that lead role. It's something that you don't often see when we're talking about Black horseback riding. It's a woman is not front and center and in the lead. And this photo and several photos that I've seen of her breaking that mold is really sort of deepening the conversation of, the who and what with regard to agency in these spaces that Black folks are supposedly, non-existent. And, once you scratch the surface, you find such a rich and diverse sort of language of who's in control of said agency. And it's really beautiful at this point in time that she's that person. And I'm really glad that I could stop you for a second on this, because I want people to really take in the meaning of this image. There are pockets across the country of Black equestrians, Black horseback riders, Black cowboys, Black cowgirls. It is such an integral part of our Black narrative. And I'm so glad you have this in there. I had to stop you for that. So.
No, absolutely. And just thinking about, our visual library of who a cow person is usually a white male. But when we think who worked the lands that, created the economic prosperity in this country, and it was Black.
Come on now, get on that soapbox and say it.
So I totally see that. And, I think it would be difficult growing up today with social media kind of deforming our beauty standards. But at the same time, I feel really fortunate that my sisters are growing up at a time where they see more people reflected like them in roles of power, and not in a tokenizing way, but truly getting to hold on to that. And that not being something that, I think about Black excellence a lot. And I think what I ultimately want to see is that not being something that is treated as the exception, but that they are synonymous. Black is excellence. And we don't really need to delineate that, because it's redundant to say Black excellence, is what I would like to see.
What I've been looking at lately? Black mediocrity. Like, there's a space for Black mediocrity to exist where, mediocrity from a Eurocentric or, American culture standpoint has been pretty much the norm. That, you know, you can go through pretty much any industry and have great examples of mediocrity, but that mediocrity is not sort of populated by Black folks. We're held to this higher, you know, regard. And I say, let's colonize all the parts, you know, take it back for ourselves. Like, we can be boring. We can make very boring and banal art that has absolutely nothing to do with our struggles. And, you know, we can do all kinds of things. Like, that's breaking that narrative even further. Excellence is as only as good as it is balanced by all those other things. I think it raises it up. If we don't have all those other elements to raise it up, then excellence becomes this sort of like flat sort of landscape, and nothing actually raises up there. But, you know, I'm championing mediocrity in Black culture.
Let us be average and still take up space.
Right, you know, like, let us chill. Like, let's make some average work, you know. Not everything has to attack the system, you know. And sometimes that is an act of resistance as well. Like, I'm resisting the need to teach you about your ways, you know. That's a resistance. Like, you have to go and do the work now. You know, don't pay attention to my sense of excellence. I'm going to be over here making kites and, you know, painting watercolors that are very bad. You know, maybe that's what I want to do for the next year or so.
Yes, absolutely. And to go back to saying there is no monolithic Black experience, that it can fall into all these colors, and it doesn't, my life doesn't have to be a symbol for all Black people or Black achievements. I can just be for myself.
Absolutely.
And my life and accomplishments speak only for myself. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's go on to the next slide, because we could go into mediocrity and forever.
Well, that was all the work I had to share today. So
Awesome.
yeah, I wanted to end it on this slide, and just again echo my thanks and appreciation to have this space to share all this and to talk about photography. It's really not something I get to do all the time.
Well, you need to, because your work is awesome. And if anyone has the opportunity to go to her website, I suggest that you do so, but focus in on the section of her work known it's under places. Absolutely beautiful. Just go look. And I don't think you're ready for what places are from Marissa's point of view. So do yourself a favor and check that out, because you will be incredibly just awestruck by the vision she has. And thank you. And then we're going to come back and get some more questions in, and I'll talk to you later on about mediocrity.
Thank you so much.
No problem. All right. So we have another amazing guy from Oakland, somebody that I've met out on the street who made his bones, quite frankly, by being on the street. He has a unique sense of just portraiture that is like none other. Just one of my favorite photographers that I've met over the past couple of years in person. And the last time we saw each other was in LA at a Sweet Chicks, right?
Yeah, Sweet Chicks eating.
We're eating. Yeah. And his work, it ranges from street photography to lifestyle, commercial work, but really what Mr. Ruffin here is known for is his unique sense of the portrait, and how this really conveys a sense of like immediacy and urgency. Without further ado, Brandon Ruffin, AKA Rough Draft. I've always wanted to do that like that.
I'm so appreciative to be here today, and thank you, Sean, and everyone at LACP just for having me. It was wonderful hearing you, Marissa. Your work is amazing. I've seen it before, but it's just always a treat. So no, again, I'm very humbled to be here. It's been a difficult week, but talking about photography and being amongst people who appreciate the capturing of life in all its little ways brings joy to me. So I'm happy to be here. Please forgive me. I'm not as prepared as I would like to be, but I do have some photos to share. It is not going to be as lovely as what Marissa just showed us, but I definitely I would love to share some photos. And
you can occupy mediocrity. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I want to sit in that space for a little bit if you'll all indulge me. No, but let me I need to figure out the screen share. I have a folder I'd like to share, but let's see. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. So I have some photos for you guys. And that is not what I meant to do, so excuse that. Can you guys see the screen though as it is?
I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, I got thumbs up, so I'll go with that. What we'll do is we're gonna go and we will just open it up in a very basic format here, and we'll go to good old photos. Doesn't fail us. So as Sean was saying, I've been involved in all different types of photography in my journey, but where I really felt myself able to be the most artistic and to put a message behind the work that I wanted to do was photographing people. And with photographing people and doing portraiture on the street, I was really forced to talk to people. And it's something I describe as sort of a lost art, right? We even before the pandemic, and we were all, sort of finding new ways to be amongst each other and talk to each other and have these personal relationships in using Zoom and different mediums to talk back and forth. There were so many ways to communicate. There was Instagram, there was text message, there was emails, there were all these ways to communicate, but none of them really involved being in person and being present and sort of absorbing another person's essence. The art of in-person communication was becoming lost. And so I really enjoyed what I was receiving from being out and talking to people, mostly strangers. It gave me a great deal of perspective about my own life, and it also helped me with my own implicit biases. And so I had this idea. I said, well, if I can get more folks to see these pictures, tell these stories of all these different people I'm meeting, that we could work on a couple different things. One, we could work on that lost art and promote being in person, being present, and speaking with each other, interacting with each other. Eye contact, shaking hands, hugs, all those things. So, things we're not doing right now because of COVID, but these things that we were already not doing a whole lot of because we had gotten used to talking to each other from, all over the place. And so as much as social media and technology has done in developing relationships with people all over the world, it had also done some negative things in the relationships with people right in front of us. And so a lot of my work is sort of centered on that. Dealing with people's stories and occupying intimate space with people. A lot of my portraits are close up. I'm not a big distance guy. Sometimes I'll shoot for distance for environmental factors, and wanting to capture an entire story. But I think that it's often overlooked the capacity for story that lies in someone's eyes or a detail in their face, a scar, something that they had since birth or whatever you have. There was a lot of story inside a person's face. I feel the same way about hands. I think you can learn everything you need to know about somebody if you really invest yourself in their eyes and their hands. There's so much about who they are, right? If you look at someone who's 100 years old and you look at their hands and you look at their eyes, you can learn a lot about who they are, and something about the eyes the eyes don't really age in a way. They eyes gain some wisdom and they carry a little life with them, but there's always who that person is always sits there. So I really begin to enjoy occupying the intimate space with another person, talking to them about their lives, and then photographing them. And so some of these photographs here are that. So like this gentleman here was a guy I met in West Oakland. For those who are not familiar with Oakland, West Oakland is one of its tougher areas.
Hey, Brandon, I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Yep.
We're not seeing the slideshow or the images that you're looking at because I think you switched to a different application. So here's what I want you to do. Stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Open it, and then open it back up, how you're going to show the slideshow, and then go back into share screen, and it should pick it back up.
Okay, perfect. I do apologize for that. I think this is it right here. Let me share that. Perfect. You guys see a guy smiling there?
Yeah.
There we go. Now we're back on track. I apologize. So this is a gentleman from West Oakland. This is early morning, right after a rainy morning. The rain had stopped, and I, went out into West Oakland to go do some photographs. It's one of my favorite places to photograph because, I do enjoy spending time in communities that don't get a lot of voice time, if you will. West Oakland is not a place that many people will go to if they're not from there. And West Oakland has been plagued with violence. It's been plagued with drugs. It's been plagued with all the things that we hear about. But then there's also a lot of beautiful culture that's in West Oakland. There's a vibrancy. People are out. They're about. The communities in West Oakland are people get out and they talk to each other. They deal with each other. They hang out. They share joy. They share sorrow. They share themselves with each other, because West Oakland, it can be a very sort of closed off community, but within that closed off community is a very vibrant one. And so it's a place that I go and I photograph a lot. So, ran into this guy in a random morning. I love gold teeth. I come from a Southern family, and growing up in the Bay Area, as most of us are transplants, all right? Most of us are here because our grandmothers and grandfathers or great grandmothers and great grandfathers came here as a result of the war, looking for work. They worked on shipyards. So a lot of Bay Area families can trace their roots back to the South. And therefore, there's a lot of Southern culture that's still rooted here in the Bay Area, especially in the East Bay, especially in your places like Oakland, or where I grew up, Richmond, which is just a few exits away from Oakland. There's still a lot of Southern tradition or Southern things that pop up. One of those being gold teeth, and so I love them. There's a huge culture of gold grills and gold teeth here, and I've always thought it was a very beautiful thing. So I saw this guy with these gold teeth kind of just hiding in his mouth, and I started talking to him, and we had a great conversation. I asked him to take his portrait, and this is what I got. And it was just such a gem, because when you think of West Oakland and you think of the people of West Oakland, you don't think of this. You don't, it goes back to what Marissa was talking about, joy being an act of resistance, right? Survival being this thing that says, we don't care what you're throwing at us. We don't care what you've continued to throw at us. We're still going to live. We're going to smile. We're going to have joy. And this guy had that. And I just thought that this photo was very representative of, a sort of a struggle that does not, although you're going through a struggle, you don't allow that struggle to stop you from having moments like this. And so I just thought he has this smile. I can imagine if I compared this photo to him as a child, that it would probably be a similar thing. This is his genuine smile. But this was through interaction. We talked, we shared jokes, we had a good time, and that was able to get this photo out of him. I think sometimes one of the things that disappoints me, and with some colleagues, is that they'll go to a place like West Oakland and they'll look for somebody smoking crack, right? They'll look for, some young woman who's being trafficked and walking the streets and try to catch people at their worst moments.
Yeah, that's that poverty porn.
Exactly. And it's been something that the ethics of photography has really been in question the last few years, where people are starting to call those things out. And for me, it was always important not to get involved in taking a picture that was just provocative for the sake of being provocative, but what's the story behind it? And so again, I could have taken, this guy was drinking, he was drinking a bottle of vodka when I first started talking to him at 8 o'clock in the morning. But I didn't want a picture of a guy, who was looking hard drinking vodka. I wanted a picture of him, whoever that person was. And so this is him. This is a picture of that guy. This is a young lady from Richmond, my hometown. There was a lot about this photo that called me to capturing her like this, but I just thought she was so beautiful. There's a lot of struggle and a lot of strife that comes from being from Richmond, and it can be exceptionally hard for young women. Young men, we have our own issues in Richmond, but young women kind of deal with all the same issues we're going through, but with more expectations to sort of be resilient to them and still maintain this compassion and beauty, even though they're in a place that doesn't always foster that. But when I saw this young woman, I just thought, man, she had a 510 tattoo on her neck. She had like the dollar bill in her hand, and even her hands were very expressive. Her hands kind of said, they're beautiful, but they're not delicate, if you will. There's a life lived in those hands, and but there was still a brightness to her eyes. And when you talk to her and you dealt with her, you could see that she had been through some things, but again, she still has joy. She still gets up every day, and for her to be able to put this little smile she had on for this picture, it meant a lot. And I was just really humbled to talk to her and get that photograph of her.
Let me just stop you for a sec. There's a ubiquity of this type of beauty in our neighborhoods that I am absolutely enthralled with, man. I'm so glad you got this shot. I could find her here. I could find her in Atlanta. I could find her in
Absolutely.
Houston, in Detroit. You know, that sense of, you know, there's this common thread of this kind of beauty, but the variation comes with where the woman is. You know,
Yes.
it's this sort of vernacular that happens from city to city, but it's like you know what kind of sister you're dealing with here, and it's like you can't come in any kind of way other than genuine. So
Yep.
the fact that you're able to get this type of portrait, knowing what we know, usually you get rebuffed pretty quickly.
Yes. Yeah, you
You know,
do. I mean, I always tell people for every photo I've gotten, I've had 10 people say no.
oh, just
You
10?
know,
Just 10?
on average, I've gotten better at getting photos. But I mean, yeah, the biggest
Yeah,
thing I think for anybody who wants to be a street portrait artist
that's
is you
right.
have to be able to live with the no's.
The
And
nose are the best part, man.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the sense of adventure and excitement in
yeah,
it,
yeah,
right? If everybody you asked to take a picture was just, all right, yeah, go ahead, and you had, you got to have it your way all the time, I think that there would be, it would be lackluster.
yeah,
But because I don't know what someone's going to say, I don't know how they're going to react. I enjoy that. That's all part of the interaction as we're
yeah,
getting people. And yeah, again, these young ladies who come from neighborhoods like that, they deal with a lot, and so there's a guard that's up. It's a necessary guard. I think as men we often forget just how women walk through this world in general. There's things we don't think about, but in conversations with my sister, in conversations with my wife, and and with cousins, just in friends who are women, you start to learn that there can be so much trauma or even anticipated trauma,
yeah,
that comes with being a woman in this world, that again, there's a guard that's up. And I try to be cognizant of that as a
yeah,
man walking up to sometimes women on the street to ask for their picture. I always try to be respectful. I keep my I don't physically crowd their space until they welcome me into that
right,
space. But just always keeping that really high level of respect there, and being genuine. And I try to do that with everybody I photograph. The key for me is being genuine.
yeah,
I'm going to give you myself, and
yeah,
if I'm lucky, you're going to give me yourself back in return.
yeah.
But it's always earned. You're never going to just get it for free, especially in the spaces that I photograph. These are spaces where people are guarded for a reason.
I mean, this, and then I want to go on to the next slide, but this brings up an interesting part of my practice where I make space for Black women photographers with my male privilege, because I have encountered so many Black women who have wanted to be street photographers like you and I, with all the risks involved in being street photographers like you and being women, and then having to hold a camera against people like us, our brothers, right? And in doing so, I've learned so much about this dichotomy of safety, agency, and identity. And the camera doesn't make it any easier. It actually draws, Black women with cameras end up having more attention thrust upon them in the neighborhood than we do. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles that I try to overcome when uplifting all of the other artists around me. Oh, did we lose Brandon? Brandon, you there? I think we might have lost him. Let's see if
I think we might have. Shoot.
Yeah, he seems to have dropped. I don't see him on the screen here.
oh man, we were about to get a good
Yeah.
showing of work.
Stand by, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us.
I can pull out the puppets now and do the puppet show if you want. Like, remember we talked about that? Let's see if we can get him back on the line. That's more entertaining. I'll send him a text and see what's going on. In other news, how's everybody doing out there? Okay, he said that his connection kicked him. He should be back in a moment.
In the meantime, I do want to remind everybody, if you do have questions for our speakers today, you can drop them into the chat and we will get to them at the end of our presentation.
maybe we could actually have Marissa talk about what it's like to be a woman on the street. How have you encountered, you know, I don't know, resistance or difficulties approaching people, photographing people?
Yeah, it's funny that that came up when Sean, when you were saying that how women attract attention. I find that when I'm just out looking for photos, I will just have my camera just out and open, and I'm very introverted, so I need to kind of like get into the groove and like get a couple rejections to like really feel like, all right, now I'm in my creative space and I can go there. But something that has helped with that, I've found, is having the camera out. And I know this will be received mixed, but I find that having my camera out, you know, will bring people to me and they'll ask, oh, you're a photographer, you're a student, and then just having that curiosity come. And then, I don't know, my way is I just like to talk with people. Yeah. And honestly, it can be very hard to transition from the conversation to then, oh, may I make your portrait? But I found that my experience is that people trust me very easily and will just approach me. And I think having that camera, especially in communities that Brandon was talking about and working in, like West Oakland, where folks aren't seeing themselves photographed or represented broadly, except on the, you know, on their worst days. So to just be out there and to just go out into it with an openness, I think makes me feel really safe in that people, you know, see me as an artist. And yeah, I've found that that's what works best for me, is just having that to invite conversation and at the very least curiosity.
Yeah, it's an interesting space to have conversation, because it does get down to who gets to make what, because of the power, you know, the power structure and dynamics that sort of come before the camera. But, you know, if you're, like you said, if you're an effective communicator, you know, that kind of tips the scale in your favor in a lot of ways. And it's good that you do, because a lot of the work, I think about this a lot. You know, if 50% of the work that's out there wasn't there, you know, that's women. That's half of our population not being able to take a photo because of power, or power being sort of, you know, pushed upon them to, you know, to be in a certain space and then not to be able to make. It's our duty as, you know, Black male creators to uplift that space for Black and brown women to be able to create as well. I think we have Brandon.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It booted me for some reason. So I've returned.
It's okay. Net Zero is a horrible company. It's all right. I'm messing with you.
Oh man, let me get the screen share back. I'm sorry. Okay, hold on. That's gonna give me the same problem we had last time. Let's go. Here we are. All right. Again, though, this is actually a street portrait of a young woman in Portland. This is in the North Portland area. So, you know, in my time in Portland, I realized that this was one of the areas where a lot of people of color sort of congregated and created communities. And going back to what we were saying, you know, there's a certain level of respect you have to bring to anyone who's going to be your subject, but there is a certain amount of, there's going to be more walls that you have to tear down to get these photographs and make portraits of people in certain communities, because again, their experiences have dictated that is a necessity. When someone you don't know approaches you, you need to very quickly ascertain what it is they really want from you, because you can get hurt or killed or taken advantage of. And so working in those spaces, for me, it's not very difficult because I am a product of a space like that. And so I understand the people in these neighborhoods. No matter where I go, I understand the complexity and the layers that are involved with creating who they are. And so I try to respect those things. I try to approach people the way I would want to be approached. That's why I try to, you know, respect personal space. I try to use language that's very clear about who I am, what I do, and what's going on. Why am I talking to this person? My sole purpose for talking to people is not just for the sake of getting a photo. And I think that was probably a lesson I learned very quickly that actually helped me a lot with my street portraiture, is that these photos were not just about getting portraits, but they were really about engaging with somebody. It was really about talking with people and learning about them, and then allowing them to learn about me. And that is universal. People want to feel that you're genuinely invested in who they are. This is a photo in Velado, which is a offshoot of Havana, Cuba. It's a district in Havana, Cuba. And I've gotten to spend a lot of time there with just extended family there. And same thing. It's very, very unique to be in a space like Cuba. So secluded, very much, and especially if you're interacting with the people outside of the tour, being a tourist, because people there will interact with you as a tourist, or they'll interact with you sort of as a native, somewhere in between. But immediately people there are very much about moving on to the next task. Like, there's so many things to get done. There's so many, a lot of people have a heavy amount of responsibility there. They don't have a lot of time to waste. And so very quickly they want to know what is it that you want from me? And do I have it to give to you? Because if I don't have it to give to you, I'm on to the next thing. And it's a very similar experience to photographing, folks in Oakland, or, in Brooklyn, and being out in Bed-Stuy, or even like East New York. People have things that they're trying to get to, and it's very important for them to ascertain very quickly, what is your purpose here? So for me, my purpose is always being very genuine. This is a young man in Cuba. Immediately when he saw me with the camera, this was kind of an opposite of that older man there, who I had to talk into letting me take his photo. He saw me with the camera, and this kid immediately wanted me to take a photo of him. And so that's sort of the complexity that you'll have photographing people on the street, is that some people you'll have to talk into it, and other people will actually tell you, like, you come here, like, take my photo. The important part again is the respect level. You have to keep the high level of respect, and you have to keep. You want to. I always like to give people dignity in every photo that I make with them.
Right.
Right. I think everybody is worthy of that. Every single person. And we've all, Havana is a place you can get some photographs that show some of the more torn down areas. You can get people who look hard. A lot of kids in Cuba live a very adult life very young. They work. They have to hustle. They have to go and do things back and forth to help supplement maybe some things with their parents, or even the fact that their parents are working, and kids there, it's not the same as it is here in the U.S. So kids can kind of go off and be fairly safe. Cuba's a really safe place. So kids kind of have a little bit more independence, I think, than what, you'll see necessarily with kids here in the States. So with this kid here, you can see there's a certain amount of like life lived you can see in his eyes. It goes back to what we were talking about, the eyes.
Yeah. But
he's still a child. You can look at him and physically see as a child, but when you really look at this kid's eyes, you can see that he's lived life. And so I always love this photo because of that aspect, that duality of youthfulness, and also sort of, I don't even want to call it premature wisdom, but I'll say, wisdom gained very young.
Brandon, you know who he looks like to me?
Who?
He looks like a young Jamel Shabazz to me.
Oh man, absolutely, absolutely.
And I bring that up because we share a great deal of our principles in street shooting and being on the street. I'm listening to you, and I'm hearing, Jamel was my mentor, my early days, and what I'm hearing sounds so much so similar to how he was telling me how to be, on the street. And he and I never once talked about how to use a camera. It was all about how to be a decent human being, and how to present yourself, as a part of a community. Even if you don't live there, you're still a part of a community, and how to, transmit love to someone. And I think you get it. Like, I don't know if you ever talked to the brother about this type of stuff, but Brother Shabazz sounds like he's coming through you right now in an amazing wave. And this portrait just seemed to remind me of him. It looks like it'd be him as a young man.
It absolutely could, and it's so on point that you say that, Jamel. I've been blessed to have Jamel as a mentor these last few years, And again, I can corroborate that, right? Like I've never talked to Jamel about how to use a camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the physical manipulation of a camera, but we have had plenty of conversations on how to use a camera, right? And really what those conversations are really about is how do you talk, how do you speak, how do you tell stories with this device? And it could be a cell phone, it could be a you know, $50,000 medium format, it could be a $500 you know, starter camera. But how do you use this device that records images to tell stories? It records one image to tell a story. And yes, you know, the thing about Jamel's work is that when I saw Jamel's work, it made me understand that I had value as a photographer,
Right.
not finding some distant lands to photograph,
Right.
but going into my own neighborhoods that look like mine, neighborhoods that were built up like mine, and that I had every right to be in those neighborhoods and taking these pictures as any other photographer,
It's
regardless
almost a
of
responsibility. I
yes,
think the way that he expressed it, it's responsibility. It's right is there, but the sense of responsibility to do so, to capture and sort of claim the space for us before anyone else could come in and tell our stories. I think that's the beauty of it all for me. It really resonates, you know, in that way. But I do have a question for you. You're a fan of gold teeth. Do you have any?
I do.
I've been waiting to hear this
I have
part
a
of the
top
story.
and bottom 10 rows back, as many gold teeth as I mean, yes, I have a full gold grill. And I've had one since I was a teenager, and I've continued to get them, you know, now that I'll be 35 in October. And here's the thing about gold teeth for me. One is that I fully understand that when someone talks to me or I approach somebody with a mouthful of gold teeth and looking the way that I look with my tattoos and my skin and my beard and my, you know, that they're not going to, a lot of times I'm going to be able to blow their minds with the conversations that we're going to have. I've talked about theology and physics and all different subjects of things I've studied. And I've had those conversations with gold teeth in my mouth. And the irony is that there is these major issues that we have with seeing, you know, what do we think of somebody when we see somebody with gold teeth, or when we see somebody with dreadlocks, or, you know, that's always been an interesting conversation to me.
It's one of my favorite things to do is to show up with my big old gold chains to a meeting.
Yeah.
It's unexpected. You know, that people know me for one thing, and then they're like, oh, okay. Yes, well, I also come with this accoutrement.
Yes, absolutely. And it challenges, and it goes to the bigger point. It challenges implicit bias.
Right.
Because if you see me with gold teeth, or they see you with a gold chain, or they, right, like whatever it is, whatever the bias is.
I want to know what Marissa's accoutrement is. Is it door knocker earrings? Is it a Gucci bag? What's good?
Well, believe it or not, I have a whole full set of gold teeth.
Yeah.
My accoutrements. I feel like usually it's my backpack. I love collecting backpacks, and I usually have like a pretty nice backpack going for me. So if it's not the camera that gets conversation started, it's probably the bag. Yeah.
You're a backpacker. That's a thing we're going to have to explain to everybody about backpacker vibe in Black culture. It's another thing. But
another talk.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, I think another thing that drew me to gold teeth too, outside of like being able to sort of dissolve implicit bias, is that there's actually a long history with gold teeth and silver teeth in Black culture here in America, and it ties into suffering, and it ties into finding that joy. Again, we go back to this topic of having joy and survival being an act of protest in and of itself, right? Yeah. When the Emancipation Proclamation occurred and all these folks who had been slaves had their teeth rotting out, right? Then you go into the sharecroppers who can barely afford to work on the land they're working on. They certainly can't afford teeth, right? To get the dental work on their teeth. Well, these folks would then get silver and gold teeth. And so this was sort of a sign of this was a connection to slavery. This was a sign of lower socioeconomic status, and this transcends past just the Black culture. But as we're talking about Black culture in America and where gold teeth have found themselves today, what then started to occur was people started to get these things. They started to get this work in their mouth. They started to get this gold, and it was a sign of having joy. They would smile. They would, it was just there. It was a thing, right? It was a connection to something that was meant to shame you. It was a connection to something that ties you to a very horrific and dreadful piece of your history. It tied you to trauma. And what did these people do over time? They developed it into a cultural thing that is a connection back to that, but not a connection in a way that was traumatic, right? And when you see, and when people have gold teeth, they smile more, right? You ever come to the Bay Area, you go to the South, anywhere, those folks smile more. They want you to see those teeth. So the act of joy, again, being an act of protest, is a major thing.
Yeah, I want to move through some of these works because I definitely want to let our friends here get some questions in.
Absolutely.
You know, but let's take in some of this work.
So the quick story on this guy. I'm pulling into a train station, catch a train from Bed-Stuy into Harlem, and he's just going there. He's doing his thing, and I'm immediately drawn to him. I love tattoos, and he's got plenty of them, as you can see. And this guy had basically left Puerto Rico, was a big time gang member in Puerto Rico, and found himself here in Harlem with some family. Ended up being on the outs with his family, and was kind of wandering around homeless doing his thing. But I had a fully coherent conversation with him about his life and how he sees the world, and what his desires and wants were. This was a guy, if you looked at everybody else in this train station, they were walking by him. And I think some of the work that I've been able to do in regards to making photos with those who have mental illness, substance abuse issues, who are suffering from inside of homelessness, have been some of the most inspiring and complex conversations I've had with other human beings. And I often think, we miss out on some of these people by just walking by them. And
oh no. Hold up. Did we lose him?
There
we go. All right, Brandon, can you hear us? You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good now.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what this is. But I'll just slide through as I continue to talk about, just my work with portraiture, street portraiture in particular. One of the things that is really important with street portraiture too, if you're talking about from the technical aspect, is how to use the environment around you to get the lighting that you need to make this photo. And so I'm always looking for different elements, rather it be a wall that's painted with a light color, or rather it be, a certain spot where there's diffusion happening with the clouds, but trying to be cognizant of just not getting in there and snapping a photo. But now that you have this person, you've done all the work it takes to create that connection. That connectivity is had. One of the things I did early in my time with portraiture is I was just so relieved to finally get to the point of taking a picture that I would just snap the photo.
Mm-hmm.
I was not thinking about composition as much or lighting. I wasn't even thinking, I was thinking more of just from a documentarian standpoint, that it was more just about capturing the image.
Grab and go, huh?
Just grab and go. Okay, I had it, I got it. This person, I've captured this period of time, this point in time with this person. But from there, I began to think about, why can't you make these portraits look almost like studio portraits?
Yeah.
Why can't you spend the time with them? Once you have them, spend the time with them. Mm-hmm. Make the picture as perfect as you can get it, since you have the time. And I think a lot of people, they're so hyped up on the entry point, right, that they're not thinking about, how can I get the best photo I can get of this person. They're so caught up in the interaction, right? That it's so, the interaction is so scary in of itself. Talking to a stranger, which we learn from childhood, you don't talk to strangers. And so this entry point into engaging with someone, anticipating whether you're going to get this photo or not, all this stuff builds up, and then by the time you get to the photo, you just snap the photo.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that was good for me and with my time with these people is I really started to, once I got past the nervousness or whatever the anxiety was of talking to people and interacting with them, for me, then it was, now how can I get the best picture? How can I bend that reality between studio and street documentary work?
Yeah.
And so I look for that. I look for the light to be just right. I look for composition. I will ask them, I will instruct them on things that I think we could build a better picture with, all while still trying to maintain who that person is, right? I don't want them to be someone that they're not, but at the same time, you also can help, you can, hey, tilt your head this way, and you'll get that light.
Yeah.
Right. This is a gentleman, he spends most of his time in the Lake Merritt area of Oakland. But everybody who's in Oakland long enough knows Jeffrey. And he's just a kind man. A lot of people probably won't approach him, but if you happen to approach him, you realize like this guy is the sweetest thing you've ever met. And so I had some time with him. I didn't want to take up too much time with him, but I bought him some coffee. I bought him some food. We talked for a bit, and I wanted to make sure that I utilized every bit of light that I could to create a really dynamic lighting that I would get in the studio. And with that, that's what we were able to get. I spent the time, I was aware of my environment, and we were able to really paint with light, right? That is what photography is, painting with light. And so I think sometimes people will think that they can't get those results without extra lighting or without having this big staged and planned thing. But most times you will be able to get something very similar if you're just paying attention. But that comes from being comfortable interacting with strangers.
And and what I will say before we move into questions, that the type of work that you do in this space, the type of effort that you put into your craft adds to the sense of dignity and adds to the sense of value, not only of the subject as an individual and within their own agency, but the value of the type of person you are, or other photographers like you, like me, like Marissa, who are doing this work. These types of interactions build the value that we need to make these moments happen with much greater ease when it shows itself again. And that's something that I appreciate most about how you're able to do the work that you do and the consistency with what you do. It's tremendous. And I'm speaking to strangers. I want to let you close out for a second, and then we're going to have to speak to some of our folks and get some questions in, because we are at 8 o'clock. And I want to thank Brandon, for sharing some of the best portrait work, quite frankly, that I've seen in some time. From anywhere in the world.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
So, do we have any questions that are popping up or anything? Do we have anything that anyone would like to ask immediately, or you can unmute your mic and go for it?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on the chat over here. There's really no questions that anybody's written down. So at this point, if anybody does have any questions, just go ahead and unmute yourselves and announce yourselves and go ahead and ask your questions. And we'll.
Hey, I'm Minju. Love both of your work so much. Thank you, truly, for sharing. I wanted to ask, just because we were talking about mediocrity, if you could just let go and do whatever, what would you do? And I guess the second question is, given the movement, the moment, everything that's happening, what gets you out there? What gets you motivated to go out there and do the work that you do? Sorry.
Who would you like to address that to, Brandon or Marissa, or both?
Actually, both of you, if you don't mind, that would be amazing. Okay.
So the first question was, what would I just do if I could just do anything? I always tell people, if I could just photograph people all day, every day around the world, that would be my dream job. I genuinely enjoy other human beings, and I think that being around other people, listening to other people's stories can really help set perspective for you in your life. Some of my hardest times in life they've been bearable because of other people and them sharing their stories, their suffering, their grief, their joy, whatever it is, it can set perspective for you. I just recently on last Sunday, I lost my little sister to cancer. And I have been sustained by other people, family, friends, all from all over the place. It's been bearable because of other people. And there's other people who have lost siblings to cancer or loved ones to cancer. So guess what? I lean on those people and I look at them and I know for a fact, because I look at them, I know for a fact that I'm going to be able to get through this period of time in my life. But if you isolate yourself, if you pull yourself away from people, I don't know how you'll be able to make it and navigate through those things. Because we are each other's lifeblood, right? We, as human beings, we evolved because we've been, part of our evolution was we were tribal, right? We did better in groups together than we did isolated in our own little spots. And I still believe that's very much a part of the fabric of who we are, is other people. So I love talking to other people. I love engaging with other people. So I would take pictures of people every day all over the world if I could. And then the last question was, you had one more question. It was,
what motivates you to go out, given everything?
Same, people. I think that, again, just there's so much to gain from living this life and experiencing with other people, that it's other people that get me up to go. And I realize that there's many things that we should be fighting for a better world for all of us and for our children and for our grandchildren. And so I think that going out and doing the work, telling stories, engaging with other people and sharing my experiences, being open to hearing their experiences is something that gets me up and going, because I know that that's the key to a better future for us.
Thank you. That was truly inspiring.
Marissa, you have something for that? Because I'm curious to know too.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Minju. Thanks for coming. If I could do anything, I mean, I hope this doesn't feel like a non-answer, but my first reaction is that I'm doing what I wanted to do. I think to make images that speak to our times and to meet people and to just encounter the everyday. When I leave, I'll have a loose idea of where I'm going. I'll carry how I feel, and that shows up in my work, but I never know what I'm going to come back home with. And every time I have my camera with me, it invites me to meet someone who I wouldn't otherwise, to go places I wouldn't otherwise, and to just, I feel like I know Oakland better being an East Coast transplant. I know my community better from the work that I get to do while I'm carrying a camera. I mean, I think fashion photography really intrigues me, and I would be interested to someday, I don't know, explore celebrity photography and portraiture, and try out working on like the 20-person photography crews. But right now I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. I love getting to work solo and just get to collaborate with the people I meet. So I really feel lucky to say that, right now I really feel like I'm doing the work I've wanted to do, if I knew I couldn't fail. And then my motivation to get out, I really needed it. When the pandemic first started, I was very much the person who stayed inside all the time. I sent my partner to get groceries. I was just like, I'm not going anywhere. And I think I was motivated by the people, when I, like Brandon, getting to go out and meet people definitely inspires me to get back out. And I think doubly motivated by how many photographers get it wrong, and seeing how many frustrating tropes that photographers will follow again and again, and just feeling like I could do this way better. So I think motivated by, yes, the feeling of being in community with people, and photography is a great excuse for that, especially in a shelter in place, but also, yeah, I think just trusting my gut and my intuition, and knowing that just with who I am, I tend to look in places that other people aren't, and that needs to be a part of the story too.
Awesome. Anyone else have anything to add or ask along the way?
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you both for sharing your perspectives. You both have very powerful and inspiring work for me. Marissa, thank you for capturing the protests the way that you have. There's been a lot of people kind of popping up at time of protests and just trying to capture like the most provocative, or like you said, capture the damage, or it's kind of been like their claim to fame, so to speak. It's pretty disgusting to think about, but there's been a lot of those people popping up. So thank you for genuinely capturing those tender and intimate moments and capturing that joy. And I'm glad you guys got to talk about joy as protests. I know for myself, I've been losing a lot of my joy during this time and almost feeling guilty for having joy at times. Just with all that's going on, I'm just now getting to a point where I've started to feel my joy again and realizing, okay, it's important for me to still be joyous and still move the way that I'm moving, to be effective in what we're trying to do and pushing forward. And Brandon, man, those portraits, I'm speechless. And it's important to go to Black and Brown communities that people aren't going to, and as a Black man yourself, and capturing us, and as you said, giving people a sense of pride and dignity, that's powerful. So thank the both of you. I guess I have more so comments. A question that I would just say is, I guess, what's your favorite part about street photography? I know you both kind of touched on it a little bit, but what's your favorite part?
For me, I know we both talked about the people a bit, but to add to that, I think the fun of photography is, I think, not knowing what you're going to get and not going in with a script or expectations, and to create something that people stop and look at. And it was a moment and it was fleeting, but to have something that feels like art, and that art is a attempt at documenting reality, is a concept that's really beautiful to me. And I think that's why photography is just my favorite artistic medium, because your paintbrush is life, it's reality, it's the everyday, and to turn that and compose it through like editorial decisions that happen like that, it's here and it's gone, is just such a thrilling challenge to me. Yeah, I think just seeing the everyday and turning it into art is just a thrill and delight.
Yeah, I would have to second that. Like, one of the things I had with some of the other areas of photography I had been involved in is, like, you could go and sort of replicate those things. And in fact, that would happen a lot. I think Instagram ushered in sort of the era of replication in photography, where everybody was trying to do like the same exact thing. I mean, it was to the point where you could hardly distinguish a person's photo. Maybe they had some extreme filter on there and you could go, oh yeah, that's their style. But I can tell you how many pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge I've seen from like the 4 angles that everyone takes it. So for me, when I really started to get invested in street photography, I love the fact that it was like something you can't replicate that. You can try to get something similar, but you will never get that photo. You could go out as the person who took the photo 10 minutes later and you still couldn't replicate it, because, you know, time is forever moving on. It's forever going on, right? It doesn't stop for anybody. And so I really enjoyed that when I captured a street photography scene, or I captured a street portrait, that moment was gone. It was done. And, you know, it's fortunate, unfortunate, I say, that I've been able to photograph people who have passed on, who've died, to include my little sister, because those are images of these people that they're beautiful. And you don't know how much time you have, right? There was this guy that I met named Ken, who was this super physically fit martial artist guy. He trained NFL star. I mean, like, this guy was physically fit. I took a photo of him while doing a workshop out in San Francisco, and he and I kept up a little bit, and we even had plans to do some photos for his business, his fitness business. And Ken unfortunately died randomly in a car accident. And I didn't know about it until his friends and family hit me up about this photo that I had taken of him, how they loved it, how it was him. And it really reminded me that those moments are fleeting. And it made me wish that I was taking portraits when I was even younger. But again, in my neighborhood, I didn't have accessibility to cameras. I didn't even know that somebody like me could take pictures or take photos, and that would be serious, that anyone would pay attention to it. And so I regret all the years I wasn't in my own neighborhood taking pictures of people who are gone. You know, that I was always told when I was a kid, you're lucky if you make it to 25, right? And so I know a lot of people who didn't, and I wish I had their photos. I wish I could have documented their lives, you know. So that's the biggest thing for me, like sort of archiving life.
That's a poignant, I believe, if I have anybody else that could add anything else, I'm going to probably have to stop it right now, because we're going to be losing a couple of our guests. We had a lengthy conversation, and I wish I could keep it going on. But I want to thank everybody for really taking part in a really robust, just amazing conversation between these two amazing photographers who have an amazing future in front of them. And I want to thank LACP for all the time and effort they've put into making this, you know, the series happen. And I think we should really consider that these kinds of conversations should not happen because of the importance and special nature of the times. We should have them all the time. It shouldn't be because it's our month. We should be doing it every month, you know, coming back to sort of re-engage one another and sort of dismantle all the things that keep us apart. And just on behalf of LACP and everyone here, I want to thank Marissa and Brandon for their time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing.
Likewise, and thank you so much, Sean, for moderating and making this just a great discussion.
You know, I love y'all, so it's no biggie.
Same.
You know,
Same.
I show up for y'all all the time, anywhere, anytime. Y'all photographers know who I am behind the scenes, so I do what I can to make these kind of things happen. I love it. So really means a lot that I had this conversation with you both today, and thanks for coming.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Brandon. It was really an inspiring conversation to hear. And I forgot to mention that next Tuesday, Sean will be moderating again, and you can hear Terrell, Halsey, Ed McManus, and I have there's a third, Frank Francis, all speaking here. Same place, and you can sign up for that on our website. So hope to see you again. Again, thanks so much for everybody for being here tonight. Take care.
So much, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
All right, that was terrific. Thanks so much, Sean.
Yeah, I figured it would be a good way to wrap up on that one. It was a good kind of close there. I didn't want to have it go into 8:30, and Marissa had to go. So
Right.
Sean, that was great, man. That's great. You got a great voice too. You got a great Zoom voice.
Oh, you know, it comes from being on Zoom all day.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it works perfectly, man. I mean, it's It's almost hypnotic, but it's
Well,
it's great.
keep me in mind for all these moderations, man. I'm up for it. I'm always available for LACP, so just keep me in mind.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. When this pandemic is behind you, you can find your way out in LA. Let me know. We'll grab some dinner and we'll hang
I've
out.
been dying to get out there, so trust me, you'll see me as soon as I can. As soon as travel is allowable, I'll be back. Yeah, I miss it out there. I miss it terribly. Yeah, last time I was there was February, so you can imagine. For me, it's rough. I was out there for the past year or so every 3 weeks. So.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I miss it a lot.
All right, man. Well, hopefully we'll see you again one of these days soon.
Gotta happen. Happen. You got my email.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, I'm gonna feed my kid.
All right. See you next week.
See you next week, guys.
Take care, man.